Welcome everyone, I'm Dale and this is Cinema Historia. A Spanish noble, a beautiful queen, and a plot to steal the throne. This week we're going back to 1948 for an action-adventure romance film called Adventures of Don Juan, starring Errol Flynn, Vivica Lindfors, and directed by Vincent Sherman. So where does our story begin this week? Well, it begins late in the reign of Elizabeth I of England. So Spanish noble Don Juan, played by Errol Flynn, is sent back to his home country from London to Madrid. Following a diplomatic scandal and his indiscreet womanizing with the British fiancée of a Spanish nobleman. The Spanish ambassador in London, Count de Poland, an old family friend, sends a letter of recommendation to Queen Margaret of Spain, and she's played by Vivica Lindfors. He requests that she provide an opportunity to the Spanish court for the rehabilitation of Don Juan's reputation from the swirling gossip and scandal that have followed him around Europe in the wake of his many illicit love affairs. Accepting her old friend's suggestion, Queen Margaret thus appoints Don Juan as fencing instructor to the Royal Spanish Academy, where he has great success. During his time at court, he falls secretly in love with the Queen. The Queen also professes her love for Don Juan, but is trapped in a loveless arranged marriage with the weak and reckless King Philip III. Meanwhile, Don Juan discovers Count de Poland is now held as a secret prisoner by the king's minister. He also uncovers a plot by the king's minister, the ruthless Duke de Lorca, to gain control over Spain, to declare war on England, and to become the power behind the throne. After de Lorca is exposed by Don Juan, he intimidates the cowardly king and threatens to execute the uncooperative queen. Helped by his friends, his servant Leporello, fencing master Don Serafino, and court jester Sebastian, Don Juan tries to foil the Duke's evil plot. So, does Don Juan rescue Count de Poland and his love, Queen Margaret? Does Don and his friends intervene to the evil plot? Or does Duke de Lorca reign the throne? This is a great swashbuckler film for Warner Brothers and Errol Flynn. It was the 7th most popular movie in France in 1948, recording 3,763,314 admissions. Included among the American Film Institute's 2005 list of 250 movies nominated for AFI's 100 Years of Film Scores. At the Bambi Awards in 1951, it won Best Actor International for Errol Flynn. A nominee at the International Film Music Critics Award in 2013 for Best Archival Re-Recording of an Existing Score. A 1950 Oscar winner for the Best Costume Design and Color. Over 5,200 costumes were made for this film. A 1950 Oscar nominee for Best Art Direction, Set Decoration, and Color. Over 113 sets were built for this film. Amazing. And the trivia question this week: who was the young woman in the carriage asking for directions? Who was the young woman in the carriage asking for directions? So, a little more history and the answer to our trivia question coming up next. Now, since our story hovers around the 16th century, I thought it might be interesting to talk about a device they used to tell time with back then, and that was the sundial. And some of the photos you're about to see, I discovered a modern sundial on the Trenton Waterfront Trail, which was developed in 1995. And I was there just before 10 o'clock in the morning, and of course we set the clocks ahead an hour in the spring in Ontario, so the shadows on my photos will show just before 9 o'clock. So a sundial is a device that can tell you what time it is depending on where the sun casts its shadow on the sundial. A sundial is made up of two parts, a flat circular plate and a stick called the gnomon. The gnomon casts a shadow on the plate, and this shadow shows the time. The position of the shadow cast by the gnomon changes to align with the different times around the outside of the circular plate. This way you can tell the time by looking at where the shadow is cast using the markings around the edge of the sundial base. A sundial shows the local solar time, which may be adjusted to account for national time in your country due to seasons and daylight savings time. Before clocks were invented, sundials were the only way to tell the time. And the first recorded sundial was made in ancient Egypt in 1500 BC. Some of these sundials were small enough to fit in your pocket. Sundials became studied properly in ancient Greece. As the Greeks had a thorough understanding of geometry, they could develop more complex sundials. The Romans adopted the Greek sundials, with the first record of a sundial in Rome being in 293 BC. Roman sundials were not completely accurate because they were designed for a lower latitude than Rome. Spring-driven clocks appeared during the 15th century, so during the 15th and 16th centuries, clockmaking flourished. After the invention of the clock, the sundial maintained its importance, though, as clocks needed to be reset regularly from the sundial, because the accuracy of the early clocks was poor. A clock and a sundial were used together to measure longitude. Dials were laid out using straight edges and compasses. And in the late 19th century, sundials became objects of academic interest. Interesting. And the answer to our trivia question this week: who was the young woman in the carriage asking for directions? Well, the young woman in the carriage asking Don Juan for directions is Errol Flynn's wife at the time, Nora Eddington. A small part in the movie, but a big part in Errol Flynn's life. Interesting. Hope you like my videos, and if you do, could you help keep my adventure going and hit the subscribe button? And if you're a new or existing subscriber, a big thank you. As Don Juan would say, there's a little Don Juan in every man, and since I am Don Juan, there must be more of it in me. That reminds me, I should check up on Don Juan. He's probably up to no good. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope to see you back next week.
Be careful.
Thank you, my lady, but this has become more or less of a habit. Guards! Guards! Quickly! Guards! Leporello, quick! Guards! What now? Husband. Horses. After that man! There! Over the wall! Hurry!